first of all, thank you very much for doing this. And I just always like to ask at the beginning, did you watch a lot of movies or TV or theater as a kid growing up?
Oh my God. Do any actors say that they didn't?
It's rare.
Yeah, I was a TV junkie. I was kind of a latchkey kid was the term, so I watched a lot of television unmonitored as a child. I went to the theater a little bit, but I watched a lot of TV and I went to a lot of movies, and nothing's really changed except for now I go to a tremendous amount of theater. I still watch a lot of TV, and I still go to the movies a lot. I love it, I feel like.
Growing up, were there any productions in any of those mediums or people that were especially influential in your decision to get into this stuff?
I feel like I didn't really make a decision to get into this stuff. It was like there was no way I was going to do anything else. I feel like if I had any affinity for anything else, I might have tried something else. I thought maybe about being a marine biologist for a second, but then I was like, oh, you have to be smart, okay, and you have to have a degree, and you have to be a scientist. And I was like, and then there's sharks in the water, and things can eat you, and that's dangerous. And I was going to be a veterinarian because I love animals, and then I realized that you also have to be a doctor, and you have to cut open little animals, and I just thought that's not for me. But those were like little windows, childhood windows, where I thought that I would do something else. But yeah, the actress that inspired me the most was Jessica Lange.
Wow.
And I remember being 14 years old and catching the movie Frances midway through on some Saturday or Sunday afternoon in my living room, and I didn't know what it was, but I'll never forget it was the scene when she got out of the car and had escaped from the institution, and she was looking at the house, and even though I hadn't seen the beginning part of the movie, I could tell by the way she was looking at the house that she dreaded going back in there, and yet she also thought, there's my home. I mean, it was just all these things I felt from just a glance she gave, and I was just like, this is the most magnificent acting I've ever seen. And so I remember walking to the 9th Street video store back when we had video stores, and in Brooklyn, and getting the movie, buying it, and I think I ran the tape out, and then I ended up doing The Glass Menagerie on Broadway with her in 2005, and I still have the piece of paper that has my audition, had my audition, my final callback with Jessica on it, and I told her that. I mean, but once we started doing the play, I was like, I want you to know that I'm like a ridiculous fan of yours. And she was very sweet about it, and it's the only movie poster I have in my house is the movie poster for Frances. I don't think I'm ever going to let her come over, because I think she might be a little bit like, really? Because we're really good friends, and you have like my picture in your bathroom. It's a little weird.
So I guess that sort of leads to the question, when did you first try acting yourself, just even if it was just for fun? And then when, if you recall, did you first know that was what you wanted to do? Was it maybe Frances, or after seeing that?
I think I was already going to the High School for Performing Arts when I saw Frances. Okay. So I knew then that I already knew that's what I wanted to do. I just don't think I had seen anything that was that compelling to me, and that seemed like the kind of acting I would like to be able to do. I don't know, I mean, I was a very typical actor kid in the sense that I practiced shampoo commercials in the mirror, and like toothbrushing, in the mirror, and combing the hair, and swinging the hair around. I mean, just ridiculous childhood acting things. To me, at like 6 years old, it seemed like the pinnacle of the thing could be, a cat food commercial or something, So I would practice them in my mirror. But I remember being part of something in the 4th grade in Tampa, Florida, called ORF, where I don't know if that stands for something, but if it does, I can't remember, where it was my job to be the announcer, to announce the upcoming things. And I remember being really into it, and my dad sort of saying to me, you really seem really comfortable up there. And I was like, I do? And he's like, yeah, you just talking to the audience, and you seem really relaxed. I'm now not good at that anymore. When it was, ignorance is bliss. I didn't know that people could be out there silently hating you. So once that creeped in, I started to be a little less, hey everybody. But and so I think when I started doing that and realizing that you can get a reaction from somebody in the audience when you do something funny, or you think it's funny, or they think it's funny, or you try to be, I don't know, any of the things I thought acting was about when I was a kid, which was being charming or something, entertaining,
Mhm.
where I don't really think about those things so much anymore.
And so all of that sort of at some point, I guess, culminated in the decision to go to New York for?
My mother actually did that for me, which was, she didn't do it for me, but I mean, she made the decision when she was 27 years old to take her 5-year-old child, me and my 3-year-old sister, and she moved to Manhattan. We lived in Queens for a little while. My mom worked as a waitress at Sardi's in the theater district. And I mean, I always say that if my mom hadn't moved to New York, I'd probably be playing various characters in the Snow White production somewhere in Tampa, Florida at Disney World. I'd be, start out as one of the 7 dwarfs, and eventually I'd be Cinderella, and then I'd be the evil queen by the time I was like 89. And that was because I just wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had, because my mom wanted to be a writer and wanted to come to New York, and so that's the only reason I'm not still in Tampa, Florida, is my mom, So her coming here was the reason. And then I had a 6th grade acting teacher named Mr. Stallworth, who I auditioned for the school play, and I got the lead in the school play, and he encouraged me to do it. And he was the one that told me that there was a high school where you could do that all the time. You could act all the time and go there to study. And that was just like the most exciting thing ever to me. And so that's why I went there.
So when you came out of there, and now you were looking at a career in doing this, did you envision it being in one of the particular mediums, or did you always plan to do what you've done, which is sort of jump between the...
I don't think I had a plan, because I think I had a really naive notion that it was just going to be like, I want to do this, and someone was going to go, okay. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And I think because I was in New York, the theater world seemed very much not really a reality, but just a possibility, because it was here. It was just the mecca of all of that. And my first job ever was understudying Amy Ryan in The Sisters Rosenzweig on Broadway when I was 19. I didn't go to college, so I just started auditioning, and for 6 months I didn't do anything. I didn't get anything. And then I got a Horton Foote play at the Signature Theater, and I got an episode of Law & Order, which was my first thing I ever did on camera, where basically the entire time I'm not moving my neck, because I didn't know that you could move your body while acting on camera, because I thought, like, if the camera, so if I had watched the episode and I'm like, it's as if my character's been in a car accident or something, which she really hadn't. And I just didn't know any better, because at the High School for Performing Arts, it wasn't an on-camera class. It was really teaching about classic plays and all of that sort of more conservatory kind of stuff, even though you enter into high school and you're 14 years old. So, and so 6 months out of high school, I got the Sisters Rosenzweig, and Amy Ryan was, I think only thing Amy Ryan had done at that point was I'll Fly Away. Maybe that show was Sam Waterston who was on that show or something? It was a long time ago. Yeah. And then, and then a couple of, she'd done some plays. And,
So that was all in 1994?
1993 or 94.
So you must have felt like you made it.
I did. I thought, well, this is, and I was still living at home, so I was like, an understudy makes a lot of money on Broadway. I just didn't have any expenses, because my mom was probably not so wisely not charging me any money to continue to stay at the place. And the only reason I ended up moving to California was my mom moved to upstate New York, and I had gone to Wilmington, North Carolina to shoot a pilot called American Gothic. And then that show got picked up, and then it was canceled, and I got flown to LA to test for another CBS pilot. I tested against Hilary Swank. I remember that. And I'll never forget her turning to me and going, because the woman that was casting it, after you test, because you go in a room and with a bunch of executives in suits, and you perform the scenes, and then they make you wait while all the other girls go in. And the two of us were sitting out there, and the casting director came out and said, everyone, you can go, but Sarah, will you stay? And I'll never forget, Hilary Swank very playfully looked at me, and she was like, you bitch, you totally got it. And I was like, I did, because I'd never tested for anything before.
Right. Wow.
Things worked out well for Hilary Swank, though, so it wasn't, I don't think she's worried about that moment when I got a job over her.
That is
never happened.
What a funny story.
I know, it was really, she's a great girl.
Well, you mentioned that sort of American Gothic came along and took off for a while,
Yeah.
but then came down. And I guess the question is, for you, when you look back, what do you think was the the first project that caused a lot of people, in a way, a big, the big break, the one that caused people to take notice of you the most at the beginning?
That's a really good question. For me, I don't really feel like anything really started happening for me until Studio 60. I mean, I had had jobs before then, and I had, Down with Love, probably. Down with Love was first. I was 26 years old, and that was the first. That was really the first. But the movie didn't hit. But it was sometimes, I know in this business, it happens to people, and when you hear about it, you can't really believe it, but sometimes the girl that almost gets a job gets some other job, because everybody in the business knows, like all the studio heads and all the casting people, and everybody knows, who almost got something or who's testing for something, and that just brings an awareness of you and so when I auditioned for Down with Love, I was auditioning against some very fancy big people, and I don't think I was expected to get that job in that grouping. So I think it was the first time people were like, who got what? And then the movie just didn't succeed, and so it didn't really do anything to propel my career forward. But
You were on the radar.
I was on the radar, and I was in a big studio movie where there were 4 leads, and that was one of them. And every single of the other people were movie stars. And David Hyde Pierce, who was an Emmy-winning television star, and then there was me, and they were like, "Who's that girl?" Yeah, but nothing happened with the movie. So.
Well, I guess between American Gothic and Studio 60 and a number of others that, just looking back over the credits, it seems like you had a number of experiences where the shows were, people were very excited, they took off, they didn't necessarily deliver terrific ratings, but they really had cult followings. Maybe that's even an understatement, just
Yes.
the people that like them really like them.
Yes.
Is it a tough thing to swallow when something like that doesn't go as far as you might have hoped it would? Or
Yeah, I mean, I remember getting Studio 60 and thinking, well, I'm gonna buy a couple houses, and because I just thought this is gonna go. I remember being in my trailer, like on episode 2, thinking, I guess maybe I could redecorate my trailer like the way people do. Like people decorate their trailers. I'm probably gonna be here for a while. This is Aaron Sorkin, and it's this Matthew Perry, and it's Bradley Whitford. It was just a cast of such incredible people, and the writing was so amazing. And the launch of the show was obviously, NBC was so behind it that I thought, this is gonna be a big deal. But it wasn't. I mean, it was a big deal for me. I mean, that was the first time, I got nominated for a Golden Globe. It was, I think that was the real turning point for me, whereas like the next season I got offered a network television show, and that had never happened to me before, and that was because of Studio 60. But it is always painful because you spend a lot of time, and I think I have felt in my career, which is the actor's lament, I think, for the most part, and I think of myself really as like a journeyman actor, because I get to I get to do plays, and I get to do television, and I get to do movies, and I'm not a huge star, so I can kind of, continue to focus on being an actor, and I don't have to do some sort of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know, I've had a lot of near misses of things that were supposed to kind of change everything that didn't, and you do sort of sometimes go, I don't understand why that keeps happening to me, and then you look at another person who goes from show to show that runs for 3 years, and then that show gets canceled, and then she goes on another show for 5 years, and it's just like, I don't know why that doesn't happen. And I don't know what the reason is, but at the same time I think, well, Studio 60 were still on the air. I wouldn't have done this play and that play. I wouldn't have gotten to do Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. I probably wouldn't have been in Game Change because the schedule wouldn't have worked. Just they're just, I couldn't possibly fathom what the rhyme and reason for why things happen or don't happen. But it's definitely depressing and sad because you're always trying to get momentum. Everyone's trying to get some traction, and when something almost hits but doesn't, and then it's like one of those conveyor belts, and you just start going backwards on it because you're no longer moving, and it's just, it feels like that, even though I don't know if that's community perception, but inside it feels a little like, what's happening?
And yet people will probably always, there will always be somebody wherever you go who will come up to you and say, Harriet,
Yes, I mean, the studio, believe me, the number of people who come up to me about that show, I'm thinking, really? Nobody's watching? Because it seems like people really watched it. Yeah.
But maybe it's the kind of thing also, it's, I guess people process TV differently these days because last time I was in this room, it was with Kristen Ritter, who had done Breaking Bad and got this new ABC show probably as a result of that, but she said it was years later because people take that long to catch up with some certain shows.
That's true.
So I wonder if that, may be part of it. I guess it doesn't help if it is,
Yeah.
but it's interesting.
I mean, at the end of the day, the good news about it for me is that I'm so proud to have been on it.
Yeah.
And,
That was great.
to me, it was a great show,
Yeah.
and I got to say the things Aaron Sorkin
Right.
gave me to say. I mean, there's nothing anybody could wish for more than that, so I just,
No.
yeah.
So last pre-game change question,
Uh-huh.
just in terms of the movies, I think, again, in some ways, a lot of the movies that you've done are not necessarily the blockbuster type of movie, but again, movies that people adore, like the
Yeah.
people who do see it. And Martha Marcy, to me, is the ultimate example of that. I don't know that it made a fortune, but critics loved it.
No, and I think it made enough to be not a
Profitable,
yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was a bad
No,
thing
no,
for
not at
the
all.
studio. And I think the greatest thing about that movie to me is just Sean Durkin, that director, who NYU graduate. He wasn't even 30 when we made the movie, and he just, I don't know. I think that, and Elizabeth Olsen too, and.
But you guys did something pretty special.
Yeah, I think the movie turned out, boy, there was no way to know. We were in this really crappy town in upstate New York, and it was just, I didn't expect, I just didn't expect it to be what it was. And, I'm not the actor who likes to watch playback on things, because just the minute I see myself and hear my voice, I'm like, la la la, it's just too, I can't take it. So I had no way of knowing. I remember seeing a couple of still images and thinking, the movie's gonna look like that? That's because I think Jodie, the DP, who's the DP on Girls, and who did Tiny Furniture, is an incredible DP. So it looked really amazing too.
And I think the cool stat about Martha Marcy, if I'm correct, is that it's the only movie that's ever played like every major film festival.
Oh.
It was Sundance, right? And then
Sundance and Cannes.
And then Telluride and
Telluride
Toronto.
and
And New York.
And New York, yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe, I don't know if Venice as well, but it was
I don't
just
know
like,
if it did Venice. Oh, maybe it did, I don't know.
I just remember talking, I did interview Sean at the time, and we kind of realized it's a pretty amazing thing. That
Yeah, to me, it's another one where I feel very proud to be in that. I was sitting with a group of actor friends not too long ago, and we were talking about this one actor friend of ours, and I was like, well, what's he doing? And he said, oh, he's in North Carolina working on an episode of a Nameless show.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God. And I said, is he a regular on it, or is he recurring? And he said, I think it's just a one episode thing. And I was like, God, what we do is so hard. And they both sort of looked at me like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, it's just to be in that town and working on a show that you're not excited to be working on. It's just sometimes what we have to do, if you're not a superstar, can be really hard. And they both looked at me and were like, boy, I can't even count on my hand the number of jobs I've had where I've been proud to have been in them. And it sort of gave me this moment of this reality check where I thought, no matter how much I long for a certain type of career, I have to acknowledge the reality that I have more things on my resume that I wouldn't take off, and that I'm proud to be associated with, even if I have a small part or a big part or whatever, than not. And I think as an actor, to be able to say that, I decided that maybe that should be my barometer for what success is, because I don't.
That's what people will remember.
Yeah, so.
Well, okay, so what you're really, I'm sure, most interested to talk about today, I want to now ask you about, which is just sort of, how did you first learn that A, they were going to be adapting the book Game Change, and then B, that how did you come to be a part of it?
I had no idea they were adapting the book. I had no idea anything was happening until I got a phone call from my agent saying, they're doing this movie. I think they want so-and-so, famous actress, and but I'm going to try to get you in. And I was like, I hate this phone call. Like, what is this phone call?
What's the point?
I don't really get what the phone call is. Like, I appreciate that you're letting me know you're working on something.
Right.
But what you're actually letting me know is that they want someone else or something, and you're going to try your best to get me in, and now I want to get in, and now I'm interested in the thing, and I don't even know if you can. And then he called me back a few hours later, and he said, actually, I had wrong information. That famous actress, they're not interested in her. And Gary Getzman at Playtone is desperate to get your tape to Jay Roach. And I was like, what? Wait, what? And he said, apparently there is an actress that they have auditioned, that they were considering offering the role to. Gary Getzman did not want that to happen, and he had to be in his bonnet about you, and he wants you to audition tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Jay Roach and Danny are already in Baltimore, so they're not going to be there. You'll go in with David Rubin, make a tape, and we'll see what happens. And I was like, all right. So I had just that night to do it. They did not give me the script. They only gave me my audition scenes. And I went in the next day with David Rubin, who was a godsend because he was like acting with me. Sometimes, you know, casting directors don't. They sort of look down and they read, and you're always like, how do you even know what I'm doing? Like you're not even looking at me. And acting is about listening and react. I don't know. It just, to me, is always puzzling. Whenever you go to an audition with an actor, with a casting director who has a reader there, you always think, that's somebody who knows what they're doing. And David we did like 5 takes of each scene. And I said, well, can you send more than one take? And he said, absolutely. And I really think we have it. It's great. And I was like, okay. And then I got an email from a friend of mine who was friends with Danny Strong. And he knew that we were really close friends. And so he sent an email to her saying, we just watched Sarah Paulson's tape and she was amazing. And she forwarded me the email and I was just like, wait, maybe I don't want to know this because if I don't get it, it's making me nervous. And then I got a call from my agent saying, they're not going to make the offer to the other girl. They're very interested in you. I was shooting a pilot at the time, and so there was a dates concern that it might not work out dates-wise. And then it did, and they offered it to me, and it was because of Gary Getzman.
Can I ask what the scenes were that you auditioned?
Yeah, the audition scenes were the conversation on the street, where she's blaming me for the terrible interview, and the other one was when she is refusing to talk to me, and I'm trying to prepare her for the Charlie Gibson or the Katie Couric interview, I can't remember. But those were the 2 scenes. And so, yeah, and then they sent me the script and I saw that I had a lot more scenes and I was happy to do the movie if I had those 2 scenes. With Julianne Moore, I thought, oh, with Jay Roach directing, I'll totally do that. And then I realized that there was a much bigger part to the story and yeah, so I auditioned. As I always, I very rarely get offered things. Sometimes I do, but I always prefer to read because I just feel like, isn't that sort of what my job is to, I don't know, I don't know. I got offered Martha Marcy and Marlene, but that was because someone had seen me in a play and Sean watched Studio 60 and he liked Studio 60.
So it's all for
so sometimes,
yeah.
But it's not, mostly I audition.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, just quickly, were you previously sort of up on your politics? Were you aware of Nicole Wallace prior to this?
I was not aware of Nicole Wallace, but I was a junkie during that time for everything that was going on politically. So I was as well versed as a civilian non-politician can be, which is why I think the book and the script surprised me so much, is because I remember watching her be a colossal disaster on national television and then seeing her at that vice presidential debate and thinking, wait a second, she actually seems like she's on top of something. What happened?
Right.
And then when you read the book and you realize what they had to do, and the same thing as in the movie, to get her to that place was just mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing. So yeah, I was up on it, but I hadn't read Game Change yet, so I didn't know.
Right. This is kind of a cliche question, but the fact that it is somebody who's still around, who's a real person, does that really actually put added pressure on you as an actor, or is that just sort of what the line that people say?
Oh, I think it does. I think if you have any respect for the person or for their experience, which I think you would about any person that's walking around on the planet, especially if it's your job to try to portray them with truth and dignity, even if you don't like them or believe with their, I'm not a Republican, Nicole Wallace is a Republican, but my job was to believe what she believed and to make the case, for my candidate, which is what Nicole did. So to me, I felt a great deal of responsibility to not screw it up, or I didn't want her to walk around like with her head in her hands being like, yeah, that performance or that person, that's not how I am, or that's not what I was, or it's not how it happened, or anything. And there's a lot of stuff, because Nicole was kind of the public face for the campaign. She would speak on behalf of the McCain campaign because that's what she did at the White House under Bush too. She was the chief PR correspondent. But I think she was the chief PR correspondent. Chief Communications Director. Directors of Communications under George W. Bush. Yeah, but so I did feel the responsibility. There was a lot of stuff online where I could watch her, but it was public. It was a public face of Nicole Wallace. That was not, I had not a single moment in the movie where you see me being Nicole on camera, you know. So it wasn't helpful to me in terms of copying a voice or copying any of that stuff.
And was there an instruction or a decision on your part to not seek her out or the other people in the movie before it was shot?
I think it was pretty clear that it was not open for me to talk to Nicole.
By your people working on the film or by her?
I don't know about her, but it was very clear that I was not going to have access to Nicole.
Okay.
And yeah, at first I was like, oh, that's really disappointing because I'd love to get her insight. At the end of the day, when we were done shooting the movie, I think it was right because I think it was right. It was better for the story, for the movie, that I didn't.
And I guess the fact that people don't necessarily, they wouldn't, if they walk by Nicole Wallace on the street, they might not recognize her. The same with Steve Schmidt. Did that mean that it was less important to get the physicality or the voice or things as opposed to Ed and Julianne, who obviously had to?
They had to really, right. I mean, John McCain and Sarah Palin, you would recognize their voice if you were turned away from them, probably. And certainly by sight and physical communication, there's very specific, signs that they are who they are. Nicole Wallace and Steve Schmidt, yeah, you're right. Nobody would really know who they are unless you were a real political junkie and watched a lot of Fox News because that's where they were mostly.
Right.
But I remember talking to Jay Roach about it and saying, I could do that. I do have, that's sort of what I did on Studio 60. I can do an impersonation probably of her, mostly like her voice is a little higher than mine and it's pitched in the front of her mouth more than my voice. And I thought I could do this and he was really right about it where he said, because it's not immediately identifiable, what I'm worried is that, because what I want is for Nicole to be the audience. Nicole is the eyes through which the audience is viewing this story. And if you're doing something character-y, even if it's technically right, it might take that, it might be a barrier, it might be it might be hard for people to get inside, and I want them to be able to get inside through you. So he was very right about that. And because it wasn't identifiable, no one was going to watch it like, that at home with their parent. That is not Nicole Wallace. I just know that's not her voice.
It's true. In 2009, in an interview I guess that you did in 2009 with the New York Times, you said, quote, "I always feel shortchanged somehow working on television because I don't ever feel like I get to a place where my performance is as good as it can be." In that case, I think you were being asked about a series. In
Yes.
this case, is it different doing a TV film, where you have sort of more time, presumably, to get into the character?
Yes, I was definitely speaking at that time. I was comparing doing a play and having a 5-week rehearsal process with doing a television series and you're shooting 10 pages a day, where your rehearsal basically consists of hit your mark, we're going to pull the measuring tape out to measure the distance between you and the lens, and go to hair and makeup, and then we'll shoot the scene. It's like, it's nothing to, okay. But this was like a movie. We shot 3 to 4 pages a day. And Jay, I credit Jay with this experience being different with any other television experience I've had, in the sense that I would turn to him sometimes to just say, can I just have one more? And he said, you can have 10 more, There was a real collaboration, and he was interested in why I wanted another take and what he thinks he got in the other one that he feels he can move on if I want to, but I feel that I could trust him that he really got it, and I did, because he's Jay Roach and he's great.
I think that you talked in other interviews about the 2 scenes that were sort of the most interesting / challenging for you, and I just want to ask you if you wouldn't mind talking about again just why that was. The first was the one in the car where you're just basically being ignored.
Yes.
And then the other one, which I think is sort of the most, sort of sucks the air out of the room when it happens, is your big emotional moment, I didn't vote.
Yeah. Those were both hard to do, just because crying on cue is a hard thing to do.
I was gonna say that.
Not that anybody was waiting for a tear, or there was some cue moment, but I did know that moment also was not in the original script. The first script I read, that was not there, and then by the time I got to Baltimore, it was in there, and I remember reading it thinking, wait, I get to do that? That's so great. And it was easy and hard. And easy I just mean because Woody is an incredibly generous, emotionally available actor, so he was right there with me. Jay literally made anybody who didn't need to be on the set, not on the set. God, kept it very quiet. He let me go into a room prior to shooting. The entire movie we basically shot in different hotels in and around Baltimore, so except for when we went to Santa Fe. But I had half an hour in a room by myself to kind of get there, and we didn't even do that many takes of it because I think the first couple that came out of me were probably the most full because you start doing it again and again, and it's hard to, you're like, I don't want to cry anymore.
Where do you go though to get to that point in your mind? Is it always the same thing, or is it different for each?
I think there are certain triggers, that you use from your life. There's that funny saying that a lot of actors say, it's like, my dog is dead, that didn't work for me, and that's said more in a humorous way, but that is essentially the sentiment is true, that you try to think about certain substitutions you can use in your own life of things that would make you that upset. And also, though, I was really moved by Nicole's commitment and passion for what she did and what she believed in, and how broken-hearted she was, that it wasn't going to work, and that she couldn't get behind it. And that kind of, I think she's a really incredible person to have the courage of her convictions and to say, he may be my candidate, but I can't do this because I don't believe in this woman. And I'm not going to cast a vote for something that I would actually feel responsible for if that person was in the White House. And that's all you can control is your own vote. And so I think some of that came out of me because it moved me that she could feel that way about her work and her place in politics and what it means to the world and her future children. I mean, it was a big deal for her, obviously. And so that was that one. And the scene in the hotel room where I'm with Julie trying to get her to study the paper, and she just won't get off her BlackBerry, and she barely makes eye contact with me. And I think I did say in another interview about why that was challenging, is that usually with an actor you're working with that's as good as she is, what you're excited about is that you get to feed off of each other. But I was having to act with a person who was giving me nothing, but at the same time her nothing was something, and it was this odd thing of really feeling like I was contending with the crazy person who just wasn't, who was totally checked out, but that was kind of letting me know that she was there. But it was just, I think, a really brilliant thing that she did, and very generous of her to do for me, because I think she knew it was very difficult for me to be, But again, that was also very helpful because the stakes were high. I had a very important job to do, and she was really not helping me out. And so if she had been any more present than she was, I wouldn't have been able to act it. It was a very fun scene to play because I just felt like I kept trying to different ways to try to get her to even just look at me, look up from her BlackBerry, without getting up and taking her by the throat and strangling her, which is what I kept trying to do. Roger, being like, are you sure that Nicole Wallace never got up and tried to throttle this woman? I was like, I don't think so. She was always a professional, and I thought, this is why I could never do this job, because Sarah Paulson would have taken Sarah Palin and thrown her against the wall.
I know that I have run long. I wonder if I can just ask two quick things. The thing that, anything that touches Sarah Palin is going to start controversy. Mm-hmm. And And while I think artistically people couldn't dispute that this was a very well done movie, there were certainly some who were going to always find something to complain about with it. And I just want to present, an example just to get your feedback on this. There's one guy wrote, quote, "Take the scene where Nicole Wallace, Sarah Paulson, tries to prep Palin for her interview with Katie Couric. Wallace is portrayed as warm and concerned, facing a petulant Palin. But the same lines could have been read with Wallace being rude and Palin refusing to engage. Only Palin and Wallace can say which version is true, and they're unlikely to agree. That the film pretends to know may be its greatest offense." Is that a fair criticism, or is that, just right?
The thing I think that the person who,
You
very
remember
smart
this?
person, yes, I remember this, I Googled myself, is that the filmmakers did not presume to know. The screenplay as well as the book was vetted within an inch of its life. So yes, everything is an impression of an experience, and someone saying this is what it was like for me, or somebody saying this is what I saw, is always going to be through the eyes with which they are seeing something. It's going to be viewed that way. But if you think Nicole Wallace would do what I would do in that scene, yes, which would have been like, "Hi, could you look at the goddamn thing so that I can go?" There's just no way. That Nicole's job, the reason why she didn't vote, and the reason why it was as upsetting to her as it was, is because it mattered to her more than anything that she do her job well and that her candidate be prepared and ready. That was her job, and she didn't want to let John McCain down. And to think that it would be approached from Nicole with some sort of attitude, and I understand the idea that the movie is leaning in one way or another, but I think some of this is a testament to Julianne Moore's performance too, which is I felt for her, and I thought, God, this woman has been thrust on a stage that she's completely ill-equipped to handle, and who could do this well that fast? She could read a magazine or two or a paper, that part of it, but in terms of being able to handle all this and stay completely sane, I think that's a tall order, but that is what will be required if you're going to be Vice President of the United States. But, so I appreciate Mr. Magoo's nice comments, but I still sort of feel like I trust in the filmmakers, and I did meet Nicole Wallace after the movie was made. So I do believe that the choice I made to do it, and the choice that Jay, the direction he wanted me to go in, was based on facts, So.
When you met her, I believe it was for the first time, I believe it was at the premiere, and right after, I'm curious what she said to you there, but also just what it meant to you to hear after on when she talked to ABC News and said that the film was, quote, "true enough to make me squirm," close quote. Just that, I think that, I'm just curious, that must have been pretty validating for all of you.
Yeah, I think, she was actually there, and so was Steve Schmidt, and so were all of the people that are, most of the people that were depicted. All the people that are depicted in the movie were there. So, minus Sarah, exactly. But, it just, I loved meeting her. I think, she's somebody that I would call a friend now. We email from time to time, and I've had dinner with her when I was in town, and with her and her husband, and they're great people, and she couldn't have been lovelier to me afterwards. It made me feel like the thing I had feared that she was going to be disappointed was not the case, and I felt, proud that I hadn't let her down, and to have her be the one to say, that's how it happened. And to go on ABC News and say it was real enough to make me squirm is a testament to the veracity of it. So, I don't like that guy who wrote that.
Mr. Magoo.
Mr. Magoo, he just wrote all like, I don't like him. He looks like that.
So the last question
Yes.
is this. Now, we're obviously in Emmy season. It's hard to imagine that this show won't be very embraced as it was by critics and audiences already. And so for you, you've got that coming up, and then also a couple of exciting projects that I hope you'll just preview a little bit, because I think people who have maybe discovered you through this show or rediscovered you after maybe a Studio 60 experience or something, they may want to know what to look for next. So if you can you just kind of preview what's up?
Well, I'm going to do American Horror Story second season, which is a completely new show, essentially. Each season is going to be a standalone miniseries, essentially. So it's 5 of the same actors from the previous season, Jessica Lange, myself, Lily Rabe, Zach Quinto, and Evan Peters. And it takes place in the 60s on the East Coast in an institution for the criminally insane.
Not you, you can't bust. Yes. Are you?
Yeah, I can't reveal
Right.
who I am playing and all that because Ryan hasn't done that yet. And once Ryan Murphy does it, I'm happy to tell everybody.
Okay.
But until then, I won't do it because I won't do that. But I'm going to be doing that. It'll be a series regular on that. And then I'm going to be playing Michael Fassbender. Call me on the phone. Michael Fassbender. Be playing Michael Fassbender's wife in Steve McQueen's movie 12 Years a Slave. Brad Pitt also is in it. He's taken, I'll leave him alone. But Michael Fassbender should call me. I mean,
Pretty awesome.
I think so. Don't you think so? You've talked to Michael Fassbender, haven't you?
Yeah.
Listen, if you
Believe
have,
he's single.
I know he's single. I am single too.
Make it happen.
I was like, my publicist is like, stop saying this out loud.
Well, I think it'd be a cute couple.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your endorsement.
Endorsement, right?
I have yet to meet the guy, but I hope we're together for a long time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.